cut to the top 8. Well, players who make the top 8 will come back tomorrow to compete for the big prizes. But for now, we've got some business to take care of here. And in the feature match area, we have Eli Loveman. We just watched Eli play against Yuya Watanabe and win off of a series of impressive and kind of miraculous top decks playing humans. Eli is on 12-3 for the record. Across from him, João Andrade is on hardened scales, sitting 11-3-1. Paul, this is a winning in for top 8, and it could go very quickly given the matchup.
Yeah, and I think if I were to pick a side coming into this, I would be on the side of the hardened scales deck, mostly because the hardened scales deck has access to Walking Ballista, which is really, really powerful in this matchup, especially when you can have it in conjunction with Hardened Scales and also Arcbound Ravager. So very curious what this Meddling Mage names. Of course, Eli is recognizing that Walking Ballista is one of the most important cards in this matchup, so does choose to name that.
Yeah.
And João deciding whether or not he wants to use the Llanowar Reborn here, the Graft ability, and put an additional counter on the Arcbound Ravager.
Yeah, this Hardened Scales deck is extremely difficult to play.
Oh, yes.
It requires a lot of math. It requires a lot of precision, but it does reward you with explosive ability to end the game.
Yeah, this deck has the ability to just kind of win out of nowhere. Sometimes you just feel like you can't possibly have enough to kill your opponent, and then you're like, wait, no, Arcbound Ravager, Hardened Scales, oh, wait, I win.
Yep.
That just happens a lot.
It does, and it usually takes them a minute to kind of work their way through the turn and then go, oh, no, I do have this easily. So first decision point there for João was, do I want to put this counter on? And this is the punishment for it. This is a Reflector Mage returning the Arcbound Ravager to hand, clearing the way for 3 damage, and effectively getting rid of that 1/1/1 counter, and those are a very precious commodity for the Hardened Scales deck. So that's a win for Eli Loveman there in the early stages.
Yeah, definitely. And the Hardened Scales deck, it's kind of an engine deck. You need a lot of pieces to kind of assemble a victory condition. So it can't really play that much in the form of disruption.
Right.
So not a lot of removal in the deck. Of course, it's also a mono-green deck. So the only removal that João has access to is 1 copy of Dismember. So that's really the only way that he has in his main deck to kill that Meddling Mage to be able to play a a Walking Ballista. I keep confusing those two cards.
There's Phyrexia's Core now for João.
Remember, João cannot play Arcbound Ravager this turn, as it has been returned by Reflector Mage.
Ooh, but there's Hardened Scales now. And he's got Animation Module on the battlefield as well, which is less explosive than more of a sort of consistent, grindy, repeatable effect. But still, it does really enable some of the broken stuff that you can do, especially in conjunction with Hardened Scales. He needs something to prime the pump, though. He's got to get it going.
Yeah, but Eli has found a phantasmal image here to copy Meddling Mage, probably naming the Arcbound Ravager, because the Arcbound Ravager is very, very scary by itself because Hardened Scales is on the battlefield. That's frequently how you're able to assemble a kind of a lethal kill out of nowhere.
Look how absurd this board has gotten from Eli Loveman. The fact that there's been effectively no interaction from João means that he's just been left unchecked, and this is an incredibly threat-dense, quick deck with very good mana, and this is the result. What in the world?
Yeah. I mean, the Humans deck just continues to impress me, just in terms of how consistent it is. Every game just kind of feels the same. And, honestly, when I've played with and against this deck, it just kind of feels like you're playing a powerful mid-range strategy with a clock.
Yes.
Right? It's like you're playing Jund, but you're, a few turns faster because you do have hand disruption, you have Thalia, you have Meddling Mage, you have so many ways to kind of try to slow down what your opponent's trying to do, but then you also have the tribal synergy payoff cards in cards like Thalia's Lieutenant to just kill your opponents.
Well, João Andrade has his hands well and truly full here because, effectively speaking, he's going to have to win the game next turn if he's going to get out of this. He is facing an absolutely ridiculous board state now, and he's down to 7 life, facing multiple attackers that would kill him. So this is going to be extremely difficult to get out of. And game number 1 looks like it's going to Eli Loveman from this position.
Oh, definitely. And the meddling mage is doing a lot of work. Definitely the MVPs in this game, as João actually has both Walking Ballista and Arcbound Ravager in hand. Running the numbers, but Andrade just really can't play any relevant creatures here, and all right, so Andrade trying to figure out a way. Is there a possible way that he can survive this turn? But I just don't see it. There's just way too much pressure on Eli's side of the battlefield.
Yeah, it effectively looks like he needs to just kill Eli. Right? Like, it just feels like, given the lack of interaction and the lack of explosiveness as far as creating a wide board state for João, there's just no way.
Right, but the way to do that is through Arcbound Ravager. And with that Meddling Mage, naming basically the 2 best cards in the matchup, there's just not a whole lot João can do here.
He's going to try.
Yeah, well, you are, basically playing for a top 8 into the Mythic Championship here, so.
So is Hangerback Walker the only the only threat he actually can make here?
Yeah, so he can make a fairly large Hangerback Walker here.
It's just not the type of he needs to get rid of it. I see he's got Phyrexia's Core, but it is tapped.
Oh, and he is making a 1/1 off the animation module because Llanowar Reborn enters the battlefield with a counter. An animation module triggers anytime something gets a +1/+1 counter.
Yeah, that's a sweet little synergy right there. Anytime you can get lands going.
Right, and then he floats a mana with the Mox Opal, and he can play a Hangerback Walker, get an additional token, and this will be a 2/2 Hangerback Walker. But wait, it should actually be a 4/4 Hangerback Walker, given that it comes into play with an additional counter with Hardened Scales, and then Llanowar Reborn also should give it an additional counter. So this should be a 4/4.
So it's 1 original and then 1 extra, and then 1 extra on each of those from each.
Right, right. So Hangerback Walker should be a 4/4 here. I don't know if you can miss the Hardened Scales trigger. It might be a May, we'll see. But yeah, yeah.
Can't be 3 though.
3 would be the most impossible.
Yeah, I don't think you can miss that. I think Hardened Scales just simply does that.
Right, and then if you catch it, if before anything happens, I think that's okay. I mean,
yeah, Judge.
Right. Judge will figure it out.
This is where you and I go, let's ask the authorities here.
Even at work, I am, frequently asking, some of the people who are much better with the rules than I am. Eli Schifrin, Matt Tabak. Those are often the people that I go to. Oh yeah, oh yeah.
All right, it is 4 counters on the Walking Ballista. And he did manage to put out a nice 4/4 plus the 2 creatures, but at 7 life. Whew. Oh, there's the big winner. Thalia's Lieutenant. You get a counter, and you get a counter, and you get a counter, and attack with everything, and that is plenty enough to get the job done for Eli Loveman. Taking the hard road here, but maybe into the top 8. That is game number 1 to Eli. We'll be back with more Live Magic after these messages.
The best conversion rate going into day 2, I believe something like 12% of the field was Tron day 1, but 12% of the Tron players did not actually make it into the next day.
All right, well, let's get things going here. This is kind of interesting start here. João kicks things off with Ancient Strains, finds himself a hangerback walker, but there's the critical turn 1 play from Eli. This is what turns the Humans deck from pretty darn good to turbocharged Ether Vial on turn 1.
Yeah, Ether Vial giving you the ability to cheat on mana and play multiple creatures in one turn.
Right.
Just the ideal turn 1 play for that deck. All right, Eli. Vial for 1. Main phase will usually mean Champion of the Parish here because no reason to put a Noble Hierarch in on your main phase. So it looks like Loveman is going to run out a creature here, a human, to get that additional counter on that Champion of the Parish. So what will Meddling Mage name? Arcbound Ravager or Walking Ballista this time around?
That was a little weird. Eli actually played the Meddling Mage and just passed the turn back. And João was like, "What are you naming something?" And he's
I will name your turn.
Should. Yeah. So let's see what he's going to name. I don't think he has a choice. You can't name
you
nothing.
must.
It's been a long couple of days, and Eli's just going, just sort of put this into play, I guess, but he should get to name something here.
And it looks
and
like
he named Walking Ballista. So even though he knew about the what did he see off of the
I believe it was a hangerback walker.
Even though he knew about the hangerback walker, he still fears the Ballista enough to name it here.
Right. He does have a Reflector Mage in case a hangerback walker does get pretty large. Like a turn that involves Ravager or Hardened Scales with Walking Ballista is quite scary.
There's that animation module again for João.
Yeah, and that's kind of the one issue that I've had sometimes when I have tried playing the Hardened Scales deck. Sometimes you have hands like these where you go, what am I doing? You know, I'm playing Arcbound Worker and nothing's really happening. You know, when in the games where you don't draw Hardened Scales or Arcbound Ravager, sometimes you feel like you're just playing a really, really weak deck. Mm-hmm. Whereas a lot of times here, you know, this deck, the Humans deck on the other hand, lots of synergy. You very rarely just have a bad draw.
And it is certainly not how I would characterize this one. As Eli Loveman, he's got Champion of the Parish, 3 counters plus an Exalted trigger. Oh, I spoke too soon. That Dismember from João is going to take it down and say, well, I'm not going to take any damage outside of the requisite 4 there from the Dismember.
Yeah, I wonder if João was going to fire off the other Dismember as well, just to kind of use his mana on possibly the Meddling Mage, because, you know, he does want to, at some point, draw a Walking Ballista. He could still choose to wait. He doesn't have a ton of action in his hand.
We mentioned earlier that João has 1 Dismember in the main deck. He does bring some in out of the sideboard as well, though.
Yes.
And there it is, Walking Ballista. The named Walking Ballista Meddling Mage is going to hit the bin here. Now, that was a significant amount of damage, though, that João just spent here. He's down to 12.
Yeah, but however, this was a really big draw from João. He drew Arcbound Ravager.
Hello, friend.
And Arcbound Ravager combos very, very nicely with animation modules. So what's going to happen here is João will be able to play Arcbound Ravager. When Arcbound Ravager comes into play, of course, it enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter. Oh, it looks like he's going to choose not to do that and wait, and opting instead for Hangerback Walker. But similar thing here, Hangerback Walker enters the battlefield with a counter. He will then be able to make a servo.
Yep.
Then he will graft the +1/+1 counter from
Llanowar Reborn.
From the Llanowar Reborn onto the Hangerback Walker, which would then allow him to make yet another servo here. So, João making a formidable board here. 2/2 Hangerback Walker and also Arcbound Ravager in hand. So
yeah, this could get really stupid next turn too, right? The Arcbound Ravager with the Hangerback Walker gets explosive.
So Eli does have Reflector Mage here. He might want to use Reflector Mage here on the Hangerback Walker.
Yep, that's exactly what he's going to do. So send back the Walker to hand. And also get rid of those 2 +1/+1 counters. Again, Reflector Mage does really serious work in the matchup, but the real key here is that Eli has pressure behind it. It will not solve his problems forever, and it does get outclassed on board with the nonsense that this Hardened Scales deck can do down the line.
And look at that Inkmoth Nexus. Does João have lethal here potentially?
Dude,
with Arcbound Ravager?
Anytime they have this many permanents, I just assume it's lethal.
Right.
Game's over.
But keep in mind, Eli does have an Aether Vial on 3. If he does have a Reflector Mage, and João chooses to go all in on an Inkmoth Nexus, that could be a that could lead to a very large blowout.
Paul, he does have a Reflector Mage.
Does he?
That's what it shows here. Let's
I mean, from what I've seen, Eli, and he has a Deputy of Detention.
Too.
So it might not really be worth it here because João is putting on, has a very, very strong board presence here. I don't think it's necessarily required for him to try to get in for a very big attack with Inkmoth Nexus. He could maybe try to grind the game out a little bit because with there's a nice interaction here. With Arcbound Ravager and Animation Module, every time you sacrifice one of those servos, you get to put an additional counter on Arcbound Ravager. And every time that happens, the Animation Module triggers. So for every mana you have available, you can effectively use 1 mana to put an additional counter on Arcbound Ravager without losing a creature.
Right, it just replaces the servo. So
really, really useful for chump blocking. You know, we have, of course, that Champion of the Parish now. João can just block with the servo, sacrifice it to the Arcbound Ravager, and pay a mana and get that servo right back. And Eli's kind of, I'm sure Eli's really excited right now because it looks like João's running all of the numbers here to see if he can go for a lethal Inkmoth Nexus.
This Inkmoth Nexus is getting into the red zone. Now, he could just say, take it, or he could even hedge his bets a little bit and not put everything onto it. But if he goes...
Oh, man. Oh, no.
That's Arcbound Worker getting sacrificed. Now, remember, the Deputy of Detention, not good enough here. It doesn't hit lands.
However,
the Reflector Mage has no problem.
Right. But maybe João was playing a numbers game here. He goes, well, this is on 3, and you already played 1 Reflector Mage. I think what João wants to do is wait till blockers are declared so that Loveman can't flash in something like a Mantis Rider. However, if he had a Mantis Rider, he likely would have just played it on his previous turn and attacked. So it looks like João's going to try to go for it. Let's actually try counting this up here. And Eli trying to help him here with the numbers too.
Eli's like, do it. You know you want to.
You know what? I'll spot you a counter if you need it.
Am I just dead? Go through it anyway, just to make sure.
How much infect? Pick up the pen?
Yeah. Oh,
twirl it around.
Sakes. In this case, he may need to grab a pile of dice for João.
I actually don't think he has enough for lethal, does he?
Oh, it seems like it does.
5, 6, 7. Isn't this 9?
He's doing it, though.
Isn't this just 1 short? Oh, no, it's got 2. He has a 5/5 Ravager. If he sacks a servo and the land, and he's already started the process of sacking a bunch of things.
It's too late now, João. You're doing it. But that is not a lethal number.
What is happening here?
It's going to make it 8. 7 counters plus the 1/1 underneath. And look at this. Eli Loveman says, and I still had this Reflector Mage. But the weird thing is it wasn't lethal anyway.
It wasn't even lethal. Yeah.
And yeah, by the way, that's the key thing here, Eli. He points out you do not have an Arcbound Ravager anymore. And this one has well and truly fallen apart for João Andrade. It is looking like Eli Loveman's going to find himself in, and that's the cards getting picked up. Eli Loveman is in the top 8. Congratulations, Eli. Boy, end of a long day for both of our players down the stretch there, but it is going to be Eli who emerges victorious. He was 12-3.